Welcome to Savvy Business, Life Unscripted, with your host, Christina Rivera, where our guests share their wisdom and valuable business tips, empowering our audience to expand their personal potential.
Hi, Dr. Greg Hammer. Welcome back to Savvy Broadcasting. I'm so grateful to have you here this wonderful evening. You're going to share with the audience. You were actually here about 2 or 3 years ago sharing your insights on, I believe, mindfulness and stress, but we're going to go deeper on that. You have a 3-minute mindful practice that's also outlined in your book, Gain Without Pain, the Happiness Handbook for healthcare professionals, because healthcare professionals, it's not easy doing that sort of profession. But you know what? Life hasn't been easy for a whole slew of folks. And so I know your insights are going to be very helpful to them. But for anyone who missed our first interview, could you give them a brief overlay of your background and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. Well, first of all, it's great to be with you again, Christina. I enjoyed our chat before we went on the air and looking forward to our conversation. I am a pediatric anesthesiologist, a cardiac anesthesiologist, and a pediatric intensive care physician. I have a research laboratory where I study pharmacology, what I would call developmental pharmacology. I've been a professor at Stanford for almost 30 years, and I've been a longtime fitness enthusiast, and I mean that in the global sense of physical fitness and emotional and spiritual fitness as well. I joined our WellMD program shortly after its inception several years ago. This was convened by the School of Medicine to address the growing problem of burnout among physicians. And I was asked to give a talk and then another talk at national meetings, and had some sabbatical time and decided to write that book. So I'm on sabbatical again and writing my third book. This one is about teenagers, and it's also based on the same GAIN philosophy and practice.
Oh, boy, are teenagers and kids really in need of practices to help them. They have, the same challenges, but also a little different, depending on where you're at in your development and, going through school, and school's been shut down, and all the pressures, I think, growing up. It's much harder than when we were growing up. I mean, we didn't have all this being bombarded by social media and all these different avenues to be bombarded. It was a simpler life, I think, when we were younger.
Absolutely. And I'm flattered, by the way, that you're saying we as though we're the same age. I'm probably a little senior to you, but thank you for that. Yes, I mean, and that's partly the reason for me writing this book about teenagers, is that there are things that really never even occurred to my generation, and perhaps yours, as we were growing up. All the social media issues, climate change. I had lunch with a couple of teens the other day at a friend's house, and I asked them, "Are you concerned that the planet won't be habitable when you have children and they have children? And should I wear a bulletproof vest to school today?" These things were not even in the vocabulary. Never even entered our minds growing up. Now, I am old enough that we did have nuclear fallout drills.
Yes, I remember that.
This was. I was in grade school, early grade school, but in grade school at the time of the Bay of Pigs, and a lot of tension between the U.S. and the former Soviet Union. But the pressures that teens face now are I think, really unprecedented. But as you and I were discussing before we started recording, this is really an unprecedented, stressful time for everybody. And so most of the interviews that I continue to do 3 years since the book was published are not related to the healthcare profession per se, but the principles are really universal, and it's just been a very difficult time for everyone. And so I hope that anyone who's listening sort of takes a breath and doesn't have too much self-judgment, negative self-judgment with regards to their own negativity and stress levels, because we're all experiencing it.
Yeah. And it's interesting, Dr. Greg Hammer, is that I think you mentioned being a fitness enthusiast. I think often people will focus on the outer stuff, like, do I look fit? Do I look skinny? But often there's more of a mental, psychological, and spiritual component that people often miss as far as being fit in those areas. So I love that you mentioned that you're focusing more on those areas, because it is so important to really cut down on stress. Part of that stress is, I think, not being spiritually or maybe psychologically fit.
Absolutely. And I love Dr. John Kabat-Zinn's definition of mindfulness. Of course, he was one of the founders, or maybe the principal founder, of what we now call mindfulness, since he started a mindfulness-based stress reduction program at the University of Massachusetts in the 70s. And his definition of mindfulness, which I think can also be the definition of happiness, is awareness of the present moment on purpose, non-judgmentally, and therein are some of the gain elements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And we can go into that, but I just like to mention, I saw your wonderful dog right behind you sniffing about, if we could learn from our pets, my dog is always in the moment. And and I noticed that about pets in particular, or animals, or they're always right here, right now. They're not everywhere else in the future or in the past, or right here.
They appear to be. It's kind of like, some people talk about the benefit of having the mind of a newborn, at least at the appropriate times, of course, not while driving. I think the idea is that there is no judgment. Even beyond that, there's no sense of time or space, which is a whole other, maybe a bit deeper level. But the mind of a newborn or the mind of a dog, for example, they love you unconditionally and they don't cast judgments. And I think, again, Dr. Kabat-Zinn's definition of mindfulness or happiness, awareness of the present moment on purpose, non-judgmentally. And the on purpose is because our natural tendencies, the way our brains have become wired over tens of thousands of years of evolution, include a negativity bias. So we tend to remember negative things and forget the positive things. Excuse me. We tend to remember negative things and forget positive things. And also, we're very distracted by the past and the future, and we have a very hard time being present. And when we think about all the times when we're happiest, it's when we're present. We're walking through the forest, we're enjoying our footfall on the soft bed of pine needles on the forest floor. We're looking at the light filtering through the canopy 100 feet above us. And we're not really worried about something we said that may have embarrassed us yesterday or the list of things we have to do tomorrow. We are right there in the moment. And that really applies to, I think, all of our happiest moments. And we need to figure out a way to rewire our brains to be more present and also more positive. And the good news is our brains have this wonderful quality called neuroplasticity. And so rewiring the brain is quite possible.
Yay. I'd love for you to share a little snippet I don't want you to give all the tidbits away because I want them to go out there and get your book, but a little bit about your 3-minute practice of mindfulness. How can people start to get into that being present and non-judgmental and add that into their life?
Great question. So the GAIN practice, which I embrace personally and teach, might include as little as 3 minutes a day. So we wake up in the morning, we open the blinds. Hopefully there's some light to let in that kind of awakens our senses. We do our morning hygiene thing, and then we just find a comfortable place to sit, hopefully in a quiet part of the home. And we sit, we get comfortable, we close our eyes, we focus on our breath. We slow the in-breath down, perhaps to a count of 3. We pause to a count of 3 or so, and then we let the exhalation go, the out-breath, without effort to a count of 4. So this will slow our respiratory rate down to between 6 and 8. And that activates our parasympathetic nervous system, which is the nervous system that keeps our sympathetic fight or flight nervous system in check. So that slows our heart rate, lowers our blood pressure, lowers the amount of cortisol and adrenaline in our body. So just focusing on the breath and taking these deep, very slow, deliberate breaths into our belly, letting it out without effort is a benefit. And then we transition to the GAIN contemplation. While still focused on the breath, we recount that for which we're grateful. So tonight, when I do my GAIN meditation, Christina, it will include gratitude for being on your wonderful podcast, having such a wonderful little animal named Joey that you saw trot by and may have heard me trying to silence briefly. I'm grateful for the community in which I live. I personally am very grateful for the work that I'm able to do to help people. I feel very privileged. I'm grateful for my good health. And again, everything is relative. We all have some health imperfections, but rather than focus on those, let's focus on all the things that are miraculously going well. And then from gratitude, we transition to acceptance, because pain is inevitably part of our experience. We've all lost loved ones. You and I were talking about COVID.
Yeah.
People, many of us lost loved ones during COVID that had to die in a hospital bed, isolated from their family. I lost my son 6 years ago. We've all had pain. It's part of life. So there's a formula in the book, which is suffering equals pain times resistance. We love formulas in medicine. So the idea is, if acceptance is the opposite of resistance, the more we accept, the pain is still there, but the less we suffer. And so we bring this pain into our heart. We actually imagine, while we're sitting with our eyes closed, breathing slowly and deeply, that our heart opens. We bring the pain in, we envelop it with our heart, we nurture it, and we ask ourselves, can I live with this pain forever? And at some point, the answer is yes. And then we transition to intention. And just as in John Kabat-Zinn's definition of mindfulness, intention is necessary, because if we don't have a plan and we're not purposeful, we lapse into our old ways of thinking that are negative, ungrateful, resisting things in the world that are not to our liking. So we focus maybe for a moment as we breathe deeply just on the present experience, the sensation of the chair against our body, the tingling at the soles of our feet, something we may hear in the distance. I'm between San Francisco and San Jose airport. So when I'm quiet and focused on my breath and focused on my listening, I can often hear an airplane go by in the distance. Nature sounds, birds chirping. We focus on that for even just 10 seconds to remind ourselves to focus on our present experience. And then we remind ourselves, as we breathe deeply and slowly, to be positive, to be more optimistic and positive going forward. Then we transition finally to non-judgment. And one favorite image of mine here is to picture one of these lovely NASA images of the Earth, apparently suspended in space. And we remind ourselves the Earth is just a planet. The Earth is neither good nor bad. There's no need to make a judgment about the Earth. That seems pretty intuitive. And therefore, it's only logical that I, being just a human being, am also neither good nor bad. I'm just the person that I am. And then we repeat the I am a few times as we reconnect fully with our breath, and then slowly open our eyes, and we're ready to go out into the world. And that may have taken 3 minutes or 4 minutes.
It seems like a really quick process. And what's interesting about it, boy, this fly wants to play with me. He's having fun. But it seems like a really simple process to get in touch with what's important. And, I think on a daily basis, we're all going to fall off and start to look at the negative. Something will come into your space. Maybe I'll have someone have a bad comment for you and you'll be like, "Rah!" Or whatever might happen in your life. You'll have those moments of negativity or judgment or whatever, but not to judge that and say, I messed up today, because it's an everyday, all day process. And just to take those moments of maybe 3 minutes, 4 minutes to reconnect and get back to gain and to mindfulness, attention, and to non-judgment and to the present moment.
Absolutely. And, the miraculous thing that happens, Christina, because of our innate neuroplasticity, the ability for us to rewire our brains just through our thoughts, redirecting our thoughts, as we've been discussing, when we are being ungrateful or resisting something that we don't like, or being unintentional and lapsing into our old habits, or judging others, or perhaps most harshly ourselves, a little light bulb will go off once we've been practicing this method for some period of time, and even days to weeks. A light bulb goes off, and we can have a little laugh at ourselves, and all those judgments we made about that guy driving ahead of us who changed into our lane without using his turn signal. We recognize that a light bulb goes off. We realize we're being judgmental. We have a little laugh. We actually get a little dopamine hit.
Yeah.
And that's just reinforcing the non-judgment that behooves all of us. And so, yes, the more we sit with these thoughts and experiences, the more easily the positive elements come to us.
It's very funny, Dr. Hammer. Many years ago, I was hanging with my sister in the city, I woke up in a really foul mood. And it was interesting because I recall everything seemed to go wrong. We met in the city, the train was late, we had an incident with someone in the store, and then a couple more negative events. And it was like, oh, this is shaping out to be a really hard day. And then I think there was a moment in time where I was like, enough is enough. I'm going to stop focusing on all this yuckiness. And I made a conscious choice that I'm going to just focus on the fact that I'm here with my sister. Let's go have lunch together, enjoy the beautiful day. It's sunny. And it was interesting because I was sitting there with my sister at the restaurant later that day, and she said, "This is fun. I had a good time today." And then I thought about how different the beginning of the day was towards until the end of the day. It was a drastic difference. And the only thing that changed was how I was responding to the day. The day didn't change. The actual, but it was the way I was responding made all the differences as how I experienced and how my sister experienced it and how people around it. It was like I was creating this negative pool that was being picked up by others around me.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story, actually. So let's say that before you went to bed, you had embraced a gratitude practice or a gain practice at bedtime as well. So when you reflect on your day, you focus on the positive part of your day rather than the negative part of your day. And what a miracle it was to have this wonderful time with your sister, and how grateful you are for having her as a sister, and how you, if you'd like, accept the things that didn't go perfectly, and just completely lower your resistance to those. In fact, as you pointed out, most of them are rather superfluous. And then the more you do this, the more you will catch yourself earlier and earlier on one of those bad days.
Yeah.
And you'll have a laugh and reroute your thoughts and experience accordingly, just as you ended up doing later on that day.
It's interesting because I don't even remember why I was angry or what happened, but I just remember the difference night and day between what I experienced as far as feeling and what I experienced at the end of the day. And more importantly, what the people around me experienced because of my bad mood. Like, it was amazing that it was kind of like a rock thrown into a pond, that it was kind of, I don't know, like a contagion to people around me. It was
that ripple effect.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The negative vibes is sort of
it was like
permeating.
Catching my negative vibes. Yeah. So that was really interesting. Well, I love you sharing all this because it's a simple thing that people can just add today right into their life. But I'd love them to go pick up a copy of your book, Gain Without Pain. Where can they get a copy, find out more about you? How can they do that?
Well, they have the opportunity, if they want, to go to my website, which is greghammermd.com, GreghammerMD.com. And there's a link to the book, which is on Amazon and elsewhere. So that would be probably the quickest way. And there's a lot of media and other material on that website that my social media people do so wonderfully. I don't look at it often, but I'm grateful to them for the good work that they do.
It's great having people to help. Now, let everyone know, when's your new book expected so they can look out for it? Is there a title yet?
Well, the current title is A Mindful Teen, and I have two wonderful co-authors. One is a guy named John Redger, who's a PhD psychologist who treats teens and young adults using a mindfulness-based technique, and he's a wonderful person. And Eric Wentworth is a writer himself, an entrepreneur, and so he's chipping in as well. And there's a backlog in getting things published these days. Most people aren't aware that the supply chain for things like paper are still impacted, and so publishers do want to put out hard copies of books, perhaps contiguous with putting out audio books or what have you, but or Kindle versions. And so I don't know when the book will be out. We still are nailing things down with the publishers, so it'll be a while. But
keep a lookout for it, because I know a lot of my audience, they do have children or maybe teens, and I'm sure this will be very helpful as well for them. So I just have to thank you again, Dr. Hammer, for coming to share your great wisdom today. I'm very grateful that you showed up.
Happy to join you anytime, Christina. Thank you.
You betcha.
Like, subscribe, and share this episode. To listen to more savvy episodes and savvy biz tips, go to www.lifeunscriptedradio.com. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest, email Christina at lifeunscriptedradio.com.